Okay, welcome back. We are here with more Script Camp. This is yet another preview class that's leading up to our new feature boot camp, or just screenwriting boot camp as we're now calling it, because we now cover both pilots and TV in the same course, which lasts for 8 weeks and will take you all the way from idea to finished draft of your brand new script, whether it is 30-minute, 60-minute pilot, or a full feature between 90 and 120 pages. All right, today we're looking at subtext and breaking down what this means, different types of text, how we can sort of utilize subtext in our stories to communicate theme and dramatic argument. Thank you for joining, everybody. There are some links in the chat for you to check out. The simple new links are just scriptca.mp/bootcamp and wordca.mp/bootcamp. Oh, somebody says they can't hear me. Can everybody hear me okay?
Sorry about that, Connor. I overran with my class. I'm here now.
Oh, all good. Can you hear me, Becky?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can.
Okay.
Have you got someone on Zoom or do you need me to go on there?
No, I've got Zoom going. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Earl is the one that can't hear me, so I'll just tag him in the chat. Maybe try reconnecting. Okay. Let's dive into subtext stuff for today, and we'll have time after the slideshow portion where we can look at some log lines, or maybe you can talk through an outline or some issue that you are working through with your feature or TV pilot today. We have another boot camp from 3 to 5 as well later on Bootcamp. That is our novel boot camp, and that one runs for 12 weeks. It is our biggest program and will take you all the way through that first draft of a brand new novel. All right, let's dive into subtext. Oops, wrong one. Let's go to this tab. All right, easy, simple question to begin with. What is subtext? Anybody want to just take a stab at the basic definition?
I can do it. I'll go on. No.
Go ahead, Sword.
Yeah, Sword, go ahead.
Subtext is basically what it being say basically. One example of subtext I could go in like the visit where Jovi stand at the beginning of I don't know what it's called.
I had a little trouble understanding that, but thank you for taking a stab at that definition. Somebody else want to take a try? Go ahead.
What I would say is the unspoken things that go through with the story that are understood, but they're not fully like grounded or pointed to. There are things happening in the background that to tell more about the subtext. To tell more about the background of the characters and such.
Okay, great. Yeah, things that are unsaid. That's a great way of phrasing it. Did I hear somebody else as well? Becky, go ahead.
Yeah, so subtext is unspoken meaning behind what or beneath what the characters say or do. So it's like their emotions or their motives. It's like the tension that we, the audience, can infer, but they haven't like outright said it. So they might smile and say something really sweetly, but inside we can tell the subtext is they're really angry.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think those are all some good definitions there. It speaks definitely to the emotional state of the characters because people use all kinds of subtext and implication in their real daily lives too, not just in stories. Maybe the easiest way to approach it would be breaking down what are the different types of text. So to begin with, if we think of just text as being like the story at exactly what is told to us, then it's just literally what is in the book or what is on the page of the script. So that's everything that is sort of explicit. The opposite of explicit is implicit, and that might be sort of like on the level of what a character is saying or meaning in a scene. Like a person can use subtext in communication, or the story may have a sort of subtext to it as well. Things like the theme or the dramatic argument are types of subtext in that they may not be outright stated, though in some cases the character just says the theme. I'm sure we've seen that happen. But they don't have to, right? The subtext of a story is ultimately kind of like the point of that story or the dramatic argument of that story. So it's sort of like, yeah, everything that is not said, but really is the point. That's how I think of it personally. There's other types of text too. We also have contexts, which is sort of like the environment that the text lives in, the situation, conditions, and circumstances in which that the narrative is playing out. One kind of context might be cultural context, meaning what country is this taking place in and what point in time? What are some other types of contexts that might inform the story? Anyone else?
You reveal there's a dead body in the other room.
Okay, so sort of
Sort
like
of changes the meaning.
scenic information context. Yeah,
Or
that can
yeah,
inform.
sort of changes the meaning of what they were just, the conversation we just heard, when you realize like, oh, wait, there's something really, you know, that's why the person was sounded so odd.
Sure. Yeah, just plot information can add additional narrative context for us. So we can look at not only what country and culture this and point in time this takes place in, we can look at what do we know already. We have completely different frames of context at the beginning of a story versus at the end of the story, and we always have to factor that in. What are some other kinds of context? What about linguistic context? What language are the characters supposed to be speaking? Somebody else have another one? What's another context that the story that can inform the text? Go ahead.
Related to the dead body thing is when somebody doesn't die on screen. Like they make you think they died, but they don't show you the death.
Oh, okay. You're sort of talking about the like narrative implication that something happened even if we don't explicitly show it. Yeah, that's definitely connected to the idea of subtext for sure. Especially if you're trying to sort of go ahead.
I was just say, sorry, I missed the are we specifically doing like what's the context of this setting with the I'm fine or
No.
creating
Just in general, talking about types of context for stories. For instance, historical, so, linguistic, the chronological context. We could look at like magic or fantastical context that your characters live in a world that is informed by certain magical or supernatural rules. Go ahead.
so in, for example, uh um period romance such as the Renaissance, I know that there's this whole courtship, and so there's like the way of behaving, and it's very kind of it's like I said with that, people smiling and looking like they're being pleasant while they make snide comments about someone's clothing, the kind of, oh, I see you've wear that dress again, that kind of so that's quite common, where it's the being pleasant and nice, but not being pleasant and nice.
Yeah, the context of etiquette in this case. That's huge and can completely change the meaning of a scene. Public versus private, the rules that people are following and the expectations that are placed on them, those are all part of the context of the story, definitely. I think another one to mention would be genre context. For instance, if we start a story by saying once upon a time, that's sort of placing us in a very specific mode of storytelling that allows us to sort of accept different things as congruent and germane to the text itself. So, like a story starting with once upon a time tells us that it like frames it as a fairy tale somehow. It sort of says there is an element of fairy taleness to this, which goes to build certain expectations in the audience and sort of tells us what is possible in this world, and also can be used to sort of start to set up promises very early on. So, of course, every scene is going to be informed by just the knowledge of what kind of story we're in. All right, let's look at paratext. So para means besides or like adjacent to in the sense of, paranormal is like beside like outside of beside the normal. So paratext is outside beside the text. This might be stuff that is sort of informing the story but is not actually part of the scene. Some examples might be footnotes, or like somebody told you that this was going to be an awesome story. That's kind of paratext, or like a quote on the dust jacket, or a review that you read of it, or something like that. Anybody else have an example of paratext?
Um, so yeah, sometimes, I mean, it's kind of a really bold move in a screenplay, but sometimes a writer will put something at the beginning, like, um, I don't know, this is meant to painterly world where blah 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 or something. You know what I mean? Like sometimes there's a sort of like a little. It's a very, like I said, it's like kind of risky to do this, but I have seen it work sometimes in scripts.
Yeah, like a preface page with some sort of paratext that informs us of like the intention of the piece or like how it's meant
Hmm.
to overall look or
Or
feel or something like that.
like the sometimes like this is an absurd world where blah blah blah, or just like sometimes tonal notes that just when you're reading it helps you to understand what the writer's going for, I guess.
Definitely. Yeah. And in some cases you can have some fun with that, thinking of the like the Lemony Snicket style of like there's a like sort of a curator of the story or like a storyteller
Hmm.
within the story. Then you have text that's sort of pretending to be paratext, where it's like somebody saying like this next part of the story
Oh,
is going to be really depressing. You don't want to read this next part. That kind of is masquerading as paratext, but it really
it,
isn't in fact
and
part of the text. Go ahead.
a voiceover kind of can fill that role too, right? If you have a voiceover of someone who's telling us about, you know, this is me, you know, I'm dead. Let me tell you how I died or something, or.
I guess I wouldn't quite count it just because the voiceover is part of the narrative. Like it's not
Right.
actually outside of the text entirely, but it sort of has that same feeling of like someone commenting on what we're seeing. So it's similar, but I guess just not quite the same.
Yeah.
Is the like I have in my story, you seen that 2 days without an incident thing? Would that be considered paratext?
Sorry, I can't remember what this is from. Is this a movie or a book or
Oh,
what
mine
was
was
this
a
in?
cartoon script thing. You was helping me with the other day.
Okay, and how is the text intended to be displayed? Is it like a on would it be on screen, you're saying?
On a billboard, like just like a little background visual.
Okay, no, that's part of the
Is that
text.
considered?
That's part of the text.
All right.
Right. Yeah. It would have to be outside. Like it would have to not really be part of the story somehow.
Um, I got a question about this. So in one of my books, I'm doing it's the prison one with the girl, the teen one where she's been sent to the adult prison on Titan, and throughout the book, there's these little chapters that are that they're kind of designed to look like company manual, information. I don't know if you remember, this is going right the way back. That kind of like, so you've just arrived at our Titan detention facility, that kind of thing. But it's designed to give extra information about the world to the reader. So it's sort of separate to, it's not that our character is reading that at that time. They're just kind of like these inserts as the book goes that just tells the reader a bit more about the world as it sort of goes. Would that be classed as paratext?
Not really. It's just sort of like a form of like in-universe artifact, I guess those are sometimes called, or diegetic
Yeah,
documents as they can be called. There's like a
yeah,
couple different names for that. But no, it's like you couldn't really take it out. I mean, I guess you could take it out and the story would still make sense, but I guess what I'm saying is it is still part of how you are intending. It's like direct communication to the audience. And I guess that's the difference, is
yeah.
that the text of the story is always told right to the audience, whereas paratext would have to not be communicated by the story to the audience. It's communicated in some other way, like it's, I don't know, notes on the margins or something like that.
Oh, okay. Cool. All right, thank you.
Yep, thanks for the question.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Will the language being spoken be paratext or context?
That's the
Like
linguistic
if it's in
context of the
English,
story.
but it's actually being spoken in another language.
Right. So that's called the linguistic context of the story. Usually the language that you're printing in, like we sort of like there might be a conceit that, the characters are all supposed to be speaking Romanian, but we're reading in English, so therefore it's kind of translated. Yeah, that's what that is, just the context, not paratext.
Okay.
Thank you for that. So subtext, let's get back to this one. This is referring to the kind of the iceberg thing where we have everything. The iceberg is what you see on the surface, and everything underneath it is kind of like the subtext, the true meaning that is hidden. Um, and this can be part of, we mentioned just regular human communication. Some people are more internal, more quiet, and speak through implication. They don't want to actually explicitly say what they want. They're going to just give a single command. They'll snap their fingers, and you think of that archetype of the king that is petitioned by servants all day long. He doesn't even want to spend any more words than he wants to on than he must on anyone. So he just snaps his fingers, and the guards know what he wants. That can be a form of power. The more subtext and implications your characters use. Think of a character like Logan Roy from Succession. That's like a huge amount of power that you can wield by simply like slyly implying what you want, and then people sort of spring to do it. What is that quote from that one Shakespeare play? Will no one rid me of this troublesome priest or meddlesome priest? You can kind of just like ask a question, and that can sort of be you expressing what you want. So there's a lot of ways that you can factor that into the simple dynamics of the communication between your characters. It's not necessarily them lying, it's really just them expressing themselves in the way that they know how. And often it is an intrinsic part of how people communicate. And I think it is really crucial to balance this because and we want to make our characters and stories communicate this in similar ways to how they do in real life. We always have a certain layer of stylization in movies and TV in which it's like it's not going to feel always one-to-one like a real conversation, and that's not necessarily the point. But the use of subtext is one of those things that we want to kind of take from real life and utilize in your stories to give your characters greater dimension and depth and just make them feel sort of more realistic. There are some types of realistic communication that work well in stories and some parts that don't. Not every, like most of the time when you're writing dialogue for movies and TV, you should be thinking in terms of like, the goal isn't to make them talk like people, exactly like people do in real life, but more like to make them talk the way they do in movies. And you could think of movie language as this kind of like hyper efficient form of communication almost, wherein we kind of get to the point very quick. We establish what is the character's goals, like in the first act, the beginning of the conversation, and then you apply tactics as they try to get their way. We resolve it, and then we cut away. It's much quicker than real conversations are, like especially with all the talking around the point that people do, and all these sort of people taking forever to actually express what they want or work up the nerve to say what they want, or any of these things that kind of slow down actual talking in real life. So those are things you have to factor into the way that you're writing fictional dialogue, and you should be studying. I would suggest be a student of both real life communication and also fictional communication, and the ways that those two coincide and sometimes clash with each other. The words themselves, what is it? The truth beneath the words is that subtext, and it's not going to be always the same as that text on the surface. Hope that makes sense, just that those basic definitions. I think that another good way to look at this is in the context of advertising. We see subtext almost every day, and especially when you look at weird ads like ads for cigarettes or alcohol where they can't show somebody actually drinking or they can't show somebody actually smoking. All they can really do is use visual implication and subtext in the advertising, right? Think of all those ads that you see where it'll be like a woman in a red dress driving a cool car, and then it'll be like a guy in a suit on a beach, like sitting, lounging in a chair with his tie undone, like cracking open a glass or cracking open a drink. And then the implications and then at the end it says like this is an ad for perfume or cigarettes, and we're like, I guess that didn't really like, it's hard to sell the idea of how something will smell. So more often for perfume, it's like, this is what it will make you sort of feel like. If you buy this product, then you can also have these sorts of experiences. You can be kind of like these people or be having as much fun as they are, or you can be as cool or successful as they are. Or maybe, we just want to associate it with the idea of class. Maybe you guys have seen ads for, or, cigars or things like that kind of have that idea behind them. Becky, do you have a question? Go ahead. Maybe that was from before, and I just now saw that text comment.
Yeah, no, sorry, that was from earlier.
Okay, my mistake. Dragon here has mentioned the Axe spray body ads. Yeah, anything that is like smell is so hard to communicate in visual media. Like you can show like a picture of like a bowl of fruit, but in order to really like the advertising will really lean into more sort of like creating imagery around that sort of thing. Think of like a drink, or think of like a smoothie or something like that. The ad will be like splashing water with like a cranberry in it. And it's like it's sort of saying it's like this is imagery that will remind you of refreshing things, and that kind of is a way to say like, okay, if you use this, you will feel kind of like that. You will be refreshed in the same way that this, I don't know, cranberry is being splashed in this water.
I like the way cartoons deal with smell, where like it's for a bad smell, it's a wafting green like mist.
Right? Yeah, that's a literalization of it that works really well in animation. And if it smells really good, doesn't it like pick them up and sort of like carry them over to it?
Yeah, it carries them towards the it carries
It
them
gra-
towards the food.
Sometimes it like grabs them by the nostrils and like drags them towards it. It's
Yeah.
always good. So that's not subtext at all. That's externalizing and like using cartoon logic to sort of showcase an internal thing. Harder to do in live action, so you can see why they use so much implication. Okay, so questions on the basics of subtext before we get a little deeper into dialogue and on the nose versus subtextual dialogue.
What would you say is a good way when you're because like I find that when I'm writing dialogue in my first drafts, I do just do on the nose because I want to get the story out there. So what would you say is a good way to make sure that we get subtext in like while we're drafting or while we're editing? How do you normally do it?
That's a good question. I guess I don't focus too hard on it in drafting. I save it a little more for editing just because, yeah, you can't really slow yourself down trying to make every interaction perfect on the first round, on the first way through. So I guess what I would say is write it as straightforward as you need to in order to get the scene out, and that's totally fine. The it if your characters sort of feel weirdly robotic, then that will come out in the second read through, I think, and that can sort of lead to you always asking, what is this person's individual unique tactic? And that will sort of inform how much subtext you even need in the first place. Because if you look at the character's tactics and you're like, this is a guy who kicks in the door and does exactly what needs to be done, then you might not need any at all. Maybe you did fine on the first pass through, just sort of stating what the character wants. Those are some great scenes like that sometimes. But if you go back to the character's tactic, that will always inform how they approach situations and social, like no matter if they're social, physical, whatever it is. So maybe go back to your original pre-writing documents and look at that paragraph that you wrote about your character and say, oh, he's a timid little scaredy cat. You know, he'll always try to use subtlety and he's always going to deceive and lie and trick people and manipulate the situation to get his way. So yeah, I would if you're not sure that it's working, go back to your character's tactic and just use that more in the scene. That's how I approach it, at least. Thanks for the question. Anything else you want to say on that, Becky?
That's great. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thanks for that.
It's somewhat reassuring to know that it's something that you do on your second draft as well, that
Right.
it's not something to worry about when I'm first drafting because there's so many things you got to worry about in your first draft.
I
It's
would say so.
reassuring to know that even you're like, yeah.
All right. Let's look at dialogue. So I mentioned before, dialogue in movies and shows is sort of better than real life. And it's really clear. I think this becomes the clearest when you have friends or family that are just, they kind of are bad at telling stories or things like that. Or they are, God bless them, nothing, nothing wrong with this, nothing wrong with not having the expertise to efficiently get to the point. And this is always informed by things like culture as well. Different cultures have different levels of directness versus indirectness versus, the the ability to cut to the chase, varies a lot with different people. But in movies and TV, we really do have to kind of get to the point pretty fast. We think of most of our scenes as just being 2 or 3 minutes long. And so if there's a lot of action going on in the scene too, there's a lot of, moving parts and there's a lot of dialogue, that's very quickly going to bump up to 4 or 5 pages. And that's dangerous, sort of like dragging your pace kind of territory to be in. So I'd be careful there. You're typically aiming in a feature or TV show for 2 to 3 page scenes, like one, 2 or 3 page long scenes, mostly. The occasional exceptions that will go up to 4 or 5. But like in a TV show, if you're writing half hour, 5 pages, that's half your entire act. Your act is only 10 pages long. So you just have to kind of be very efficient with this. And that's why, we like to get in late and get out early. That is referring to sort of the entry points and exit points from interactions. So maybe you guys have heard this before, but get in late refers to start the scene. You don't have to start every single scene like at the very beginning when someone knocks in the door and shows up. if you think of all the steps that go into a real life interaction, and then think of how we would get into that in a movie or show, it allows you to sort of move past a lot of the dialogue, or sort of cut past the pleasantries and the stuff that would be boring and stuff that we already know, the stuff that's more mundane, and you get right to like the moments just before the dramatic part. That's kind of the idea behind what in late and out early means. And out early on the flip side refers to the idea that when you get to the most dramatic part of the scene, we resolve it. We sort of funnel down to the most important line being spoken. You say the most important thing, and we end there. We don't have to end every scene with, okay, well, goodbye, and then they leave and they get in their car and they drive away. Thinking of all the steps that go into a normal interaction. You want to go to your friend's house to talk to them. Well, you have to go out of your door, then lock your door and go down the stairs, open your car door, get in the car, start the car, drive to their place, get out of the car, walk up to the door, knock. They open the door and say hi. They let you in. You take off your shoes. You go sit down. Then you start talking about the thing you wanted to talk about, and then, or you do pleasantries forever. Anybody that's been in a Hollywood meeting knows that the first 10 minutes are like, yeah, traffic today was not so bad. And then you get to the thing you wanted to talk about. Well, in movies and shows, more often than not, you just kind of like start right there. Like start as we like cut into the scene just as the characters are like right about to get to that point. Here's why I brought you in to talk to you today. That sort of thing. And then yeah, as soon as you kind of like funnel down to the point, imagine the characters are, I don't know, we're talking about a big promotion or something. You might want to end the scene on the moment kind of like that implies what's going to happen next and creates a bit of trajectory and momentum in the dialogue. And that can be something like, the character, we're talking about the promotion. We end the scene with the boss saying something like, well, do you think you have what it takes? Cut there. You could just leave on your character thinking about that, or with a look, right? Off a look usually refers, if we say off, that is referring to the transition of that moment in the script. So off his look means that like, his look kind of tells us what he's thinking and what's gonna happen next, and then we transition from there. So you can do a lot of that sort of implied dialogue. You don't have to show the character saying, yes, I'll take the job, handshake. You can lead on that moment of, are you sure you got what it takes? And just see them thinking about it. And that will create a bit of curiosity and momentum as to what's going to happen after that. So think about funneling down to sort of just that most important moment. You don't like sometimes the more that you cut away from the end of an interaction, the more it clarifies what the point of that was. And it gives you like a clearer sense of propulsion out of the scene. Does that make sense? Any questions about in late, out early?
I believe I have like a sheet about talk about dialogue that moves the story forward.
I'm sorry, you have a question?
No, I was just saying, like, I believe I have a sheet with me that talks about the same thing about dialogue, especially when it talks about like moving the story forward.
Oh, okay, great. Well, yeah, feel free to link to that if you want to share that.
And yeah,
else?
and that's something
Yeah.
I agree with. Like, great dialogue does move the story forward.
All right, thank you for that. Anybody else? Okay. What's on the nose dialogue?
As you know, Frank.
Okay, so over expository.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, just
So-
really obvious. Sorry, go ahead.
You're fine. I was going to ask, is like, I'm nervous when I write that in my cartoon. Is that on the nose dialogue? Because that's one of the things I need to change, I think.
Sorry, it was a character saying I'm nervous. Was that right?
Yeah, just saying like I'm nervous instead of showing it.
Well, yeah, that is on the nose. That's as on the nose as it gets. Characters
Right.
saying exactly what they're feeling. It's not always bad though, because like sometimes someone just says what they mean. You know. So it's in certain contexts this can be considered a bad thing, right? But usually the implicate or the connotation of this is that on the nose is given as a negative note. But there are certain circumstances where characters just would say what they're feeling. So it's not necessarily a note for you right now. But yeah, to answer your question, it absolutely is. If it's the definition of on the nose, just say the thing, just say the truth. Maybe you guys know somebody like that. Go ahead.
I was going to ask about that because I've got a character in my book that she's autistic, and so she just blurts out what she's thinking, and so most of what she says is on the nose because she just kind of opens her mouth before she even thinks. and just kind of blurts out things, and that's part of her character and part of the humor.
Mhm.
So like, I mean, is that you just answered the question? You said, yeah, actually sometimes it's fine. I'm guessing in that situation, that's part of her learning journey, is to learn not to just say what's in her head.
Yeah, that makes total sense for that character, it sounds like. And there's yeah, lots of characters, lots of really, really great characters are like that and just sort of have no filter. People really respect that about a character sometimes.
Um, Connor, I have to ask, have you seen Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein film?
Yes, I did. I liked it.
Because like one of the biggest like on the nose dialogue that I know a lot of people may have issues is that someone tells the Frankenstein straight to his face, "You're the monster."
Ah, yes, I can see how some audiences might think that was too on the nose for them. And you know, what sometimes it is subjective, right? What is too on the nose for one person might feel totally appropriate to another audience member. So, yeah, I could easily see that reaction. Makes sense.
I mean, yeah, there's a line in I think it was actually WandaVision rather than in the actual Marvel movies, but it's really bizarre because on paper it looks on the nose and cheesy. He's talking to Wanda, who has lost her brother, and it's Vision, and he says, it's a memory, and he says, but what is grief but love persevering? And that does feel a bit on the nose and cheesy, but the way it was delivered by the actor and in that moment, it feels really memorable. So it's like, I think that can have an effect as well as to like the setting behind it, how it's like set up, who the characters are, who they are to each other, and how it's delivered.
Definitely. Yeah, all those can create context, which can make a line work that otherwise would not have worked or you wouldn't have earned. Um, so I think you guys have covered the basics here. Characters are saying exactly what they mean, is the point of this. The connotation is that it's duller and blander and might feel a little unrealistic or like unexciting lecture or something like that. I say as I'm doing a lecture. But in any case, it usually comes off as not very emotionally alive, not very realistic. Doesn't make the character feel dynamic. So you might want to, if you're getting this note a lot, consider what is your character's core tactic. Because if it's not being really straightforward, then maybe try something else. Try a different social approach for them. Try a different way into the scene. Try starting the scene at a different point. Try giving your character different information, or having them enter the scene at a different point. Those might all be ways to sort of shake up the interaction a little bit and find a way to a more honest version of it. Let's do a quick exercise on different types of communicators. There's all kinds of different tactics and ways that people communicate and speak in real life. Some in more on the nose ways, some in more implication. What about these archetypes here? Obviously, these are kind of reductive, but how about Mr. Judge? How would we think this archetype might express himself? Some, tactics that a character like this might use. How would this character behave socially? Probably.
Think he'd be quite direct. I mean, judges, you know, outright say, what you did was horrendous and things like that.
Hmm. Yeah. People say, have you heard that it's like horrible to date a lawyer? I've heard people say that before.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
probably because when they argue with you, they know exactly how to do it and they lay a foundation and they like have all the facts to back it up and they have sources cited and they have the evidence like all right there. You can't win. I wonder if a
Yeah.
judge would sort of have a similar thing to that, right? Where they're like, you basically cannot convince them of anything because they have the facts they have the book on their side, so to speak.
I actually want to do the next one, the teaching one, the
Okay.
Miss Creativity, just because I used to be a teacher, but my sister is a primary school teacher, and there's a definite difference between primary and secondary. No offense to any elementary school teachers here, but because you're used to talking to children all day, I think that they can become, or my sister definitely is, quite patronizing. And my husband says to me, because I do everything, I teach all the time, he says I can sound a bit patronizing to him at times when I'm trying to explain something because we're so used to being in that teaching mindset. So yeah.
Yeah, the type of communication that you do all day seeps into all of your communication. There's no way around that. That's just like how people are. You can fight it, you can code switch, but at the end of the day, yeah, you have to imagine that. And I think this is why a character's job is often like a good starting shorthand to figure out who they are. It's not the end all be all, of course. No one is like only defined by their job, but it tells us what they do all day and what their skill set is. And it tells us what kind of interactions they are most accustomed to, because that is probably going to color everything they do. Or it might also tell us what they gravitated towards. They became an art teacher because they were like this. And in terms of, I guess you mentioned this in terms of like the condescending issue of like the tone of the voice, the tone of the communication. How about this question of direct versus indirect for the teacher for the small kids who are expressing their creativity?
Um, See, this is an interesting one because I'd say my sister's very indirect. She's very kind of and I can feel like I'm a bit like this as well. Very kind of, that was a really nice try. Now let's try and do it a bit better. Or now are we having a bit of a bad day? It's okay, feelings are good. You know what I mean? It's sort of that doesn't really sort of directly call out, especially when you're dealing with younger kids. So my argument would be it'd be quite indirect, but then I have seen some teachers that are very direct.
Yeah.
So
Students usually think
it
they're
kind of
mean.
depends on them.
There's a way
Yeah.
to do it in a nice way, of course, but like I think we usually see uh like you're not really going to earn points as a teacher by sharply critiquing the paintings of a 5-year-old. You can imagine that many communication styles are informed very much by how much you care about the feelings of the person you're talking to. The judge, for instance, I
But
don't think the feelings of the person they're talking to factor into to how they interact as much as the teacher who is always factoring that in. Go ahead.
yeah, and like because I write a lot of screenplays set in a school just because that's my experience. You all remember the really nice, fun teacher at school, and you all remember the strict disciplinarian at school. There's always one that is really strict and scary, and there's always one that is like the fun teacher that everyone loves being in their class.
Definitely. Thank you for that. Let's do the sci-fi one. How about the loading droid? What would his communication style be like?
Really, guys? I
Give it a
think
shot,
he
man.
would speak in protocols and codes and directives and this kind of thing, you know, initiate that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, like just kind of explaining his internal processes because it's barely communicating at all. It's really just kind of announcing the function that he's using at that time. I could see that.
Loading routine initiated,
Hmm.
unloading routine completed, that kind of thing.
In some cases, we even see these characters. They don't even speak in like think of Star Wars droids speaking binary. They're not really intended to even communicate with people at all. The little clicks and beeps and whistles are a language that is intended to communicate like information like 100 times faster. I don't know how it's supposed to be working exactly. No one really does. But like the point is that they're meant to communicate with other machines, so they don't even have a way of speaking basic.
Just bleeps and bloops. Yeah.
Yeah. It's nice how emotional they sound. At least when R2 is sad, you do know it because he's all like,
Why does this guy have like a cowboy fringe on one leg?
I think that's the plant behind him.
Okay.
I can't quite tell though. All right, let's do one more. How about, and again, we're speaking in terms of direct versus indirect communication. What would this person's style of interaction be? Let's think of the king's advisor.
Nice image.
I have no idea what that's from.
Historic. I say if it's historic, I mean it depends again on the context, but like if you're writing historic, they're not going to want to say anything. They want to plant the idea, but they don't want to get the head chopped off. So they'll be very indirect.
Yeah. I think they have to play the game very carefully and really manage at all times. Are they being more direct or being more indirect at this moment? Because you might imagine the king really wants someone who will tell it like it is. Maybe that's what they value in an advisor if the king is smart. Or maybe you have the, total meathead king like Aemond from House of the Dragon, who basically just wants to be told exactly what he wants to hear at all times. In which case, the advisor is uh, being very direct, but only only in terms of those specific things that their lord would want to hear.
Um,
Go ahead.
Historically, with the Queen of England, she actually wanted a very specific advisor that she'd been working with when she was a princess, because she trusted him and she trusted that he would tell her the truth, but she wasn't allowed to. She was actually told she had to have this other person. Um, and yeah, that I found that really interesting that uh nowadays the kings and queens don't really even get a say on who their team is. It was just an interesting, like, historical context. There's a whole organization that sort of dictates everything the royal family does.
Thanks for that. Some good info there. So, I think that wraps up our activity on direct versus indirect. Any questions on this topic here?
I'm interested in your point of view about characters maybe being direct in some like I'm writing my character is Pandora's mum is a member of the Senate, so she's got this kind of like outward persona, but then my main character gets to meet her in her house as a parent figure, and so like I'm trying to create this different kind of personas, and you doing direct versus indirect I think is quite interesting. I hadn't really thought about that, but whether you could have someone that maybe is direct in their job because they're kind of like a judge type character, but then with their own children maybe be a bit more kind of indirect, almost like their work is a performance.
Sure. Yeah, you can definitely balance those two worlds for your character. Those two sort of like codes that they switch between. You can imagine also that a lot of people, if they do one thing at work all day, maybe they're kind of burned out from that and they don't want to be that way at home. That's
Yeah.
one way to approach it. Or the other way is, well, they are just like that all the time. They are, some characters are just a tyrant. They're a tyrant at work because they are a tyrant at home, or the other way around, right? Like you're a dictator at all times. That could just be a personality type too. But in any case, yeah, I would look at the ways that your character would sort of like, if they have a lot of responsibility and they work very hard, then at home they might want to sort of cut loose a bit. They might want to explore a different side of themselves. They may just want peace and quiet. So I think everybody wants some sense of balance in their life, whatever that looks like for them. So that's why you see sometimes, you have the certain archetypes, like, the big manly lumberjack that at home likes carving little wood figures because that's like the sort of thing that you don't get in your other context. So
Mm.
yeah, I think everybody has those little what might seem like contradictions to them, but ultimately are just part of a well-rounded individual. Like we all contain those contradictions, and we all want to explore different, or we all want to sort of like lean into different sides of ourselves at different times. I'm not really giving any good, clear answer or like helping with this question at all, but that expands on the topic at least.
There's two sort of quintessential archetypes for this kind of code switching. One is the abusive spouse, who, he's angry at her for screwing up his anniversary or something, and then when the company comes over, he's like, "Oh, look at how nice she did for our anniversary," and the complete code switch. Um, and the other is sort of like the Karen, who's like really angry at the kids skateboarding in the mall or whatever, and then when she goes and talks to the mall security, she's very like nice and less direct and more sort of manipulative. If
Yeah,
that makes any sense.
those are great examples for sure. Another time that we see these is in scenes where, like, you might imagine, or maybe you even did this as a kid. You went over to somebody else's house, and you're like, "That's how you talk to your parents? Whoa, what's going on here?"
Yeah. I'm playing a lot with that with my characters because Theo comes from a different world. Like he thinks Pandora isn't respectable. But one of the things that I want to play with is that there's a bad guy in my book that, he's the murderer. He kills people. There's another one who's like above him, who's a literal psychopath. But I want to show that this guy is human. So he's got kids, and I was kind of wanting to show how different he is, how different he talks to his kids. Because I was sort of inspired by a poem about like really dark stuff, basically Nazi concentration camp runner who was different to his kids to how he was in that sort of place. And so that's sort of like, I really like this idea of like this really horrible person, but then with his own kids, he's like this completely different character that it's like, and in your questioning, which one is the act? Is he acting like the nice dad because he wants his kids to see a different side of him, or, and so I'm sort of playing around with that kind of idea.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, even Hitler, he loved his dogs, right? So that's kind of like one of those examples of the, I guess everything has to go back to World War II eventually, doesn't it? But the
Right.
the idea that even the most evil people in the world, they still have, those that they love, those that they would never hurt, those that they would protect, like give everything to protect. People are complicated and weird like that. Nobody's all just one
Yeah.
thing. Except if
Ever
in your story
seen
you're like, this person is just the personification of this is just Sauron, this is just the personification of evil.
The person above this guy is just basically evil.
You can
But
definitely do that.
yeah.
You can have
Sorry, Luke.
it makes sense. Oh, sorry, I'll get to Luke in just one sec. It can work really well if you have that sort of character that's only evil to sort of show different facets of that with their like underlings or henchmen or things like that to kind of like explore
Yeah.
different types of evil in the story. Go ahead, Luke. What did you want to say?
isn't there a scene in Kill Bill Volume 2 where Bill is talking about the difference between Batman and Superman,
Mhm.
sort of which one of their identities is the real one? Like Superman is Clark Kent, but Batman is Batman or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. The idea being that there's even certain comics where people try to get him to they like mind control Batman to say his true name. And or they will like I forget if it was magic mind control or sci-fi mind control or whatever, but all they can get out of him is Batman. Because they're like, if this machine isn't working. It's like, no, that's actually just who he sees himself as. Like that like Bruce Wayne is the disguise. Can be a great way of sort of considering how your characters see themselves, their self-image versus their reputation, which are two very different aspects of your character's like conception of themselves. Public versus private persona, all these things are important to balance and consider. We also express subtext in a lot of different ways. Sometimes just asking a question, sometimes that can be all the character needs to say. You can sometimes saying more with less, or I should say, oftentimes, the more you can say with less words, fewer words, then it holds more meaning. Something about us just makes us see that as more meaningful. Um, you Here we are. You experience extreme suffering or shame, and sometimes people can't speak directly to that. Like sometimes we might have to talk about something else instead. You might think of all those times where the idea of euphemism, for instance, is if something is just too painful or embarrassing to talk about, we might sort of just suggest that thing instead. Sometimes silence can express subtext. Sometimes not saying anything at all or just raising your eyebrows can do all the implication that you need. Body language is a part of how we express a lot as well. Um, Thinking also of the like topics that people stay away from, omission, the things that you omit or the things that you will, you know, kind of deliberately skip over. These are all just various ways that we can express subtext. Maybe you've seen cultural practices like this where somebody will just be like, "Well, there's a plate of muffins on the counter," and you're like, "Okay, you mean like, would you like one?" So sometimes I think especially I'm from the South, I'm from Virginia, so I think that is a very Southern kind of thing. Is just sort of like state that there is an option, and that's kind of like you offering that option. Okay. So let's speak a little bit towards objective and tactic and how that informs intention and subtext. And then we will open it up to you guys for some open lab for log lines, outlining work, talking through a premise for your upcoming year of writing. Okay, so we're talking today about subtext, which is all about communication and what is said or not said, or really saying things by not saying them. All of that can be a huge part of just like who your character is as a person, meaning like we characterize via the tactics that your character uses. Like, how are they going to get what they want? How do they achieve their objectives and make progress in their lives? Not just in terms of the events of the story, but up until that point the story began and in the sort of fictional future after the story ends. We imagine that there's like a whole separate fake world out there where your character lives, and they have always they have an upbringing and a background that has led them to this point where they are who they are today. So we're thinking all your tactics will be influenced by your character's training, your character's upbringing, your character's language and culture, and all those contexts that we mentioned before. And that will be how they can use those same types of approaches towards everything, whether it's a social problem, a physical problem. Think of you have a character that he gets to a time where he needs a promotion. He just says, "Hey, boss, I deserve a promotion." And he gets home, the door is locked, he can't get it open. He kicks it off its hinges. It might be the same sort of tactic that your character applies, no matter the type of challenge. Many characters are defined in a little bit more simplistic terms than real life people are, right? Like people are in real life are much more complicated than characters are by the simple fact that within a movie, we only have 2 hours to be with that person. And so you have to kind of show them being more who they are a little bit more consistently than people are in real life. People in real life can have an off day or act out of character a little bit more. And we accept and understand that because people in the world are complicated. But the stories are about characters that have consistent tactics, and they are usually going to either propel your character through the story or get them into trouble all throughout it. So your character usually needs to be at least failing forward using their tactics and succeeding in making progress towards their external goal, or of course also factoring in their progress or lack of progress from their internal goal too. So the tactics are going to help them do that. We might refer to these as mini like objectives that your character sets for them, or your character can use their tactics to set mini objectives for themselves to support the scene objective both verbally and behaviorally. So all of this is kind of just a way of saying that your character has a unique way of approaching problems. Within or linked to that, we have the idea of objective, meaning that these are sort of like those objectives that they set for this could be objectives they set for themselves within the scene. That could be internal. An example of an internal objective might be something as simple as to feel better. I'm trying to feel comforted in this moment. I'm trying to get someone on my side. I'm trying to denigrate someone, make them feel bad. These are all the sort of like interpersonal, emotional, or internal objectives your character could have. I'm trying to feel satisfied. I'm trying to prove a point. And then we have the external objectives too, which are I'm trying to win a court case. I'm trying to win an auction. I'm trying to win blank. I'm trying to get blank. I'm trying to achieve something tangible. So that's the difference between internal and external objective. You can ask, what do they want from the other characters in the situation? What's the obstacle? And then what is your character going to do to try to solve that problem? That's the objective and the tactic. Any questions on that? I think that's pretty straightforward, but anybody want to raise any thoughts on these before we go to the next idea? Maybe I feel like I'm over explaining it. Okay.
I think you as the writer are more aware of what the character actually wants than they are at times. People tend to lack self-awareness. Like if someone's lashing out, they don't know why they're doing that, but you have an idea why they're doing that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Your character has things that they might sort of want in the moment, and then there's also sort of stuff that they want on a deeper level, or things that are informing their actions on a deeper or more emotional level that they may not be as in tune with. That's definitely true. And you can factor that into your scenes. Some stories are all about that clash of what do I want right now versus what's informing, like what's underneath that, what is leading to me feeling that way. Often the sort of break into three of a story will be where the character reconciles what they want with what they need, or they sort of come to understand that what they need is more important than what they wanted initially. Any other thoughts on objective and tactic before we look at intention? Okay, let's look at intention and subtext. So when stage actors do what's called bookwork, they go through their script and usually they'll mark up almost every line, if not every line, with the intention behind the line. It's not just saying like what your character. It's not really saying what your character is thinking necessarily, but kind of speaking to their tactic and objective. It's sort of saying like, what are they actually getting at here? So what's an example? We might think that your character, is trying to make a new friend. Maybe they come into their new friend's place and it looks like an absolute dump. But the first thing they say is, "Wow, nice place." And maybe your first intention in parentheses next to that line would be like to disarm, to comfort, to ease in, right? Something like that. It sort of leads us in a smooth way into the hangout or the interaction, right? We're just showing up for the first time. We want to make our friend feel at ease. So you're always able. I mean, you don't have to do this on every line as the writer, but if it's helpful for you, or if you're finding that you're not quite clear on what the characters want or why exactly they're saying what they are, or you're finding that you're getting a lot of notes on like the objectives being murky and indistinct, you might want to do this for just like a scene at a time, parentheses next to the line, and say, what are they actually doing there? What are they trying to achieve? And frame it in terms of like to verb. So they're trying to intimidate, they're trying to seduce, they're trying to, and for every little line, no matter which one it is, like try to mark that up. Maybe if even if it's just for one single character that you're unclear on, and maybe if the whole arc of the character is unclear, try that with a couple scenes of them throughout, and see if those tactics change. See if the way that they're approaching problems at the end is different than the way that they are at the start. That can be a big indicator for their arc. The tactics and objectives that they set at the start versus at the end are usually going to be in a movie diametrically opposite in some way because they've gone through a big internal journey that has interwoven with their external journey. Whereas in a TV show, they're really going to only take a step from A to B. TV isn't about as drastic or as fast of a character change. It's much more gradual and over time. So by the end of the pilot, your character is often not using opposite tactics of who they were at the start. And if it's more of a procedural show, then you're actually mostly going to keep their objectives and tactics kind of the same moving forward. So there's a big difference in storytelling for movies and TV there. All right. Any questions on the intention of every line as we've been discussing? Okay, I'll open to any questions on dialogue or subtext.
Surely there are questions.
In the chat?
I don't see any, but people gotta have questions. This is a really complicated subject.
All good. If not, we have time for.
What's your
work-
favorite
Go ahead.
example of subtext that you've seen, Connor?
My favorite
And
example
why
of
does it
subtext?
work so well for you? Yeah.
It's a good question. I'm gonna have to think on that one. Give me a moment. If anybody else has questions, feel free to write them in the chat. Oh, I do see a question in the chat as well.
There's a few examples where like a parenthetical sort of tells the opposite of what the dialogue line is saying. Nacho has a favorite one. I don't think is Nacho. Do you remember your favorite parenthetical for that?
I don't know if it's my favorite, but there's a really good one in alts.
Oh, what was
Is
it?
that the one you're talking about?
No, it's one you brought up earlier, but I can't even remember the one in alts or if that applies to subtext. Oh, it is subtext. You can explain that one. That's a good example.
Go ahead.
I gotta find it first.
I think it's like a simple one word. It's like no, and the parenthetical is like, how the fuck do you not see how weird this sounds, or something.
Oh, okay. Sort of spelling out like their exact internal thought process, all and like expressing that all through one word. One word that can work well.
Yeah. I butchered it with the paraphrasing, but Nacho will find it.
Yeah, that's okay. Feel free to link that if you can. I will come back to the question of what's my favorite example of subtext, just because I'm drawing a blank at the moment. Here's a question from the Year of Sword. Would the way a character speaks to another character affect the way other characters speak? I learned that the most I hang out with new people, the more I end up copying some of their speaking patterns. Okay, I think I see what you're referring to. Yeah. So the characters that your protagonist spends time with, where they spend all their day, like what the communication style that they're most used to, definitely will start to change to accommodate the area that they're in. That's part of the code switching thing that we all do. You especially notice this when you have a specific regional accent or something like that, and you leave for a while, then you come back to that region, then it becomes like most people will very quickly slip back into that exact same dialect, and they may not even notice it. They may not even hear it. So absolutely, that character's interaction style is very informed by where they spend most of their time and what kind of language they hear all day, what kind of interactions they're most accustomed to. Here's another question. How should I study subtext to add it in dialogue? Okay. Well, I would watch a show or movie that uses a lot of it. Watch really good stuff watch some of the, top rated shows on Apple and HBO and Amazon and things like this. Especially dramas, which have more complex characters and really live and die on complex characters. A show like Succession or Industry or I'm loving Righteous Gemstones on HBO right now, which has very distinct characters with you know a good balance of direct versus indirect personalities, I guess we could say. So yeah, I would really just watch shows, maybe pick a character at a time, a character that you feel like says a lot without saying a lot, and take notes on their arc, like take notes on what exactly they say. I would pay attention to not just the individual character, but like how they change across the episodes too. So maybe like pick a character at a time to laser focus on. Hope that helps there. Uh, Here's a question. Can I explain the concept of a shibboleth in case anyone is unfamiliar? Okay, so a shibboleth is like a phrase that is used to indicate membership to a group. And they can be sort of disguised, like or like encoded in some way, or they don't have to be. In some ways, like some groups that want to maintain secretive membership will have more secretive shibboleths, whereas sometimes there can just be like a cultural phrase or joke or meme or something that just indicates I'm part of that fandom, like I'm part of that culture, something like that.
Like 6, 7.
That is an example. I
Or
don't quite know what culture it's saying you're a part of, but it's I guess
Gen
just like
Alpha.
young people. Okay, yeah, it's
Or
just a Gen Alpha thing, I guess.
like the military has a lot of words. Like if I picked up a pen and called it an ink stick, that might be a shibboleth that says I served in the military, for example.
Oh, sure.
Or like
Accusing Marines of eating
NASA.
crayons is like
Sure.
something everyone in the military
Or
knows about, it seems like.
yeah, or NASA uses acronyms for everything. So that could be a shibboleth. But there's
Oh,
lots
sure.
of examples.
Yeah. Calling the paperclip a C-47, or not paperclip, the clothespin a C-47 in the film
Yeah,
industry. It's kind of like an industry joke.
or gaffer tape.
Yeah, there's all kinds of examples of this. Yeah, those are sort of like examples of jargon that indicate I'm in the know. Like I'm part of the crew. I'm part of that culture. Thank you for that question. And it looks like Nacho has shared the example from that script. I'll bring it up here. All right. So we got a couple parentheticals on this page. We love a good parenthetical. It's got to be a good one. Got air quotes here. And I guess the ones in the middle of this page are we have guy saying, mindful of how this sounds to the cashier. And then later down on the same page, I don't know what the conversation is about, but did you ever do it by yourself while you were together? How do you not know how this sounds? No. Okay. This can work in small doses. I wouldn't do this all throughout a script, but yeah, I would study the writers that use parentheticals really well. This seems like a very funny use of them. I recommend Randall Green scripts as well. Wrote scripts like Cartoon Girl and The Black Belts and Swimsuit Edition, coming of age dramedies. As far as I know, he makes the best use of parentheticals. It really taught me how to use them. Alrighty. Any more questions on dialogue or subtext? Before we open the floor?
I feel like I already know the answer to this, but I know that plays typically, correct me if I'm wrong, have more exposition. Do you think that's a general rule, like with plays that the dialogue should be a bit more not on the nose, but there does have to be more exposition because of the way that works as an art form?
More exposition. You mean more exposition through dialogue specifically?
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit more because dialogue is the main text of plays. And so you're using that to create more of the context, especially if your show is minimalist in terms of its artistic direction, right? Like if we're in a black box theater, then our really the only way to know that we're actually in the middle of London during the Blitz being bombed is, well, the actors' reactions to what's going on around them or what's not going on, what they sort of imagine is going on around them. So, to the extent that we only really have what the actors say and the actors' body language to communicate story information to us a lot of the time, then yeah, a bit more exposition through dialogue, definitely. But it's same rules apply when writing a script. Like it can still feel clunky if you do it in a clunky way. So you have to like make it it's like an added challenge of yeah, you're doing more exposition through dialogue, but you have to make it feel even more natural because that is your primary tool and the palette that you're drawing from or painting from. Yeah, and there are some plays that I've seen that even at the end I was like, where on earth were we? What was going on in that? Like there's no rule that says that you have to do lots of exposition and dialogue in plays. It's just that that's because that is the main tool we have. That's one of the most effective ways to do it. There's some very abstract, weird plays out there though.
Okay.
Thank you for the question. Anything else you want to ask on that? Okay, all good. Last call for questions on dialogue and subtext before we open the floor.
And asks, what's your favorite dialogue?
Favorite dialogue, like my favorite line? Or my favorite exchange?
Favorite exchange. Surely that one's easier than the subtext
That
question.
is much easier. Yes, thank you. Assassination of Jesse James, like one of my favorite movies of all time. Or like I think, well, let's go to my top three movies, which are In Bruges by Martin McDonagh, Assassination of Jesse James, and then number three, which kind of rotates. I guess my number three slot for a while was Moonrise Kingdom. For a while it was Short Term 12. I don't really know what's number three anymore, so I guess we'll just look at my top two. But yeah, Jesse James to me has my favorite personal combination of extremely stylized almost biblical language at times, and then very conversational, casual, sometimes in the same scene. That's that kind of amazing clash of culture that you see in really good westerns, is the sort of high culture smashing against the low culture and sometimes coexisting with it. I mean, we're talking about characters that are farmhands and hired killers, but they only grew up with the Bible in the house. And so that leads to like a very specific sort of lexicon and like way of expressing themselves. I just love it. I can't get enough of it. Tombstone. Oh, wait, the other really good one. Tombstone and True Grit. Maybe True Grit is my favorite. I can't decide. There's too many westerns. I think they're mostly going to be westerns though.
My favorite line of dialogue, I was just watching a clip of Sin City, and it's where Marv tells Warwick, you can scream now if you want to.
Yeah, Sin City's got a lot of that great, very stylized, hard-boiled noir kind of dialogue. Usually characters with that are on the direct side. Usually through their voiceover or through like their even just like their monologuing or their soliloquizing or just they have a lot to say. So yeah, a lot of great turns of phrase in those as well.
I've got a funny one from Red Dwarf where they use dialogue in place of budget to explain a joke. They have these two characters are prisoners, and one of them's looking out the window. He's like, I can't believe it. He's describing all these historical characters. Like there's Elvis and there's whoever. And then he's like, oh my God, that's Winnie the Pooh. They're tying him to the stake. Oh my God, there's a firing line. Like
Wow.
he's refusing the blindfold, and then you hear like a bunch of gunshots, and the guy just like slumps down from the window and he shakes his head and kind of almost looks at the camera and he's like, no one should ever have to see that.
Yeah, that's a fun way to or that's a good gag. I've seen that on other British shows too sometimes, where the sort of joke of the moment is like how much is going on that we're not allowed to or see, like the narrative doesn't show us.
I think I
What
butchered
was
the
the other
line
one?
as something. It's like, that's
Okay.
something no one should ever have to see or something.
Right, like
Uh,
take to the camera, basically. The show, maybe I brought this up before, but the show, the British sitcom Black Books, has a funny running gag on that as well. I think in the first season where there's some sort of pest control problem at the bookstore, and we never get to see what the pest is, but apparently it's really horrible. It's some sort of bug or rat or something. Like they describe it a little differently every time, but we get the idea that they're like screaming and hitting it with a broom and stuff just off screen. It's something just ghastly.
oh, that's fun. They also have another gag where they don't show you what they're talking about, but they're not even talking. They're both typing on a keyboard because they're too
What?
afraid to speak. And it's another Red Dwarf thing.
Okay.
I'm just thinking British comedy. I think they do this in Garth Marenghi's Dark Place as well,
I love that place.
describing stuff that's off camera.
Yeah, that's such a fun
But
gag.
just this gag of like two characters typing back and forth to each other on the computer about the thing that they're afraid of that's in the scene, but we can't see it. It's kind of fun.
Oh yeah. Lots of and also these gags kind of are budget friendly in that sort of the lack of budget is the whole point of the joke.
You say they're relying on subtext to convey whatever their budget cannot.
There you go. All right, thank you for the questions, everybody. Let's open the floor. We're not doing homework right now. We're gonna do open lab time. And this is screenwriting focus. So we'll start with that. We can do questions. Log lines, outlines, things like that. Anybody have anything to look at?
I do, but I'm just trying to like finish making it make sense.
Okay, all good. Do you want to ask something and just speak out loud right now, or do you want to try at a later event? What would be easiest for you?
Yeah, I've got a document, but it's a mess at the moment. But it's more like the beginning that I just wanted to like kind of so we can maybe just look at the beginning and then I'll tell you where to stop.
Sure, go ahead.
Hang on, let me because I can just do a few like the Google Doc. This is basically the thing I told you about with that person that I sorry, just finishing. So the person who is interested in my stuff.
Okay.
I decided that I'm going to do my the story that we talked about with the kids that have been like kind of taken
The alien
to
zoo, right? Like the alien sanctuary,
yeah,
right? Okay,
yeah.
I remember.
So this isn't like fully done. Like I said, I've got a lot here I want to get rid of. But basically I was just sort of looking at the opening, like the cold open, how it worked. And I just want your opinion on whether this is cliche or not, really.
All right.
So I've put it in the link. So yeah, basically we start off with snapshots from around the world, different kids from different parts in the world. Just kind of, you know, the kids that are going to end up being taken. And each time there's like a shimmer in the air and they disappear. So we're seeing it from people on Earth's point of view, where these kids disappear. But then when we go to our main kid, Tasmin, who's British, I wanted to kind of set her up as because she's our main character. I sort of wanted her to be a bit she doesn't have the best life, so this is kind of like freeing for her. So we start off with her sort of lives by the seaside, I should say, in the UK. In the UK, she's in a school uniform that's too small for her. She's sort of really rough looking. She's climbing over the school fence to skip lessons, and she goes to like a local shop where she goes to steal food, but the shopkeeper knows her and sort of let her get away with it, kind of because they know that she has a double life. She's sitting outside the shop, stuffing her face when she hears the hum. And now we're seeing what happens to these kids that were like abducted. So you kind of get the impression, because I'm going for more the tween audience. So I like the idea of playing with the idea of not quite a swear, if you know what I mean. Like,
Not
what
quite
the,
sure.
and then it's too late.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Did you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I think so.
yeah, you know they're swearing, but you don't get to hear it.
Mhm.
And then I was thinking that, like, so this is all kind of part of like this. I mean, the teaser would really be the first bit with all of them, and then we get into our main kid. But like, all of this is kind of the very beginning. So she arrives with all the others. She's not alone. There's all these other kids, different cultures, different languages. There's also going to be a translation matrix to allow them to communicate with each other, and also with the aliens when they're taken to this zoo. At the moment, they're just in a ship that's going to transport them. So this is still like the beginning. Because that's an easy way to get away with how can they all communicate with each other.
Wait, why can they communicate?
I was thinking,
Why can they communicate? Can you recap that?
like a translation matrix, kind of like they do in Star Trek, all of those shows. There's like an automatic translator matrix thing.
What does that mean? Like
Like
a field around them, or it's like a chip in their head, or what is it exactly?
I'm not sure yet, but some kind of like so in Star Trek it's something to do with the ship kind of just does it. I mean they're all speaking different languages, but we hear them speaking English because that the translation matrix does that. There's been episodes in Star Trek where they don't have a translation matrix, and so communication is hard. And so I'm sort of going to go along with that kind of concept where um even when they have aliens, they can still communicate. It's something that has to be turned on.
Okay.
So when they first get there, they can't communicate with each other, but then there's some kind of, I don't know, I'd need to figure it out. Maybe I mean, all the sci-fi shows do it, but in different ways. So I know that, for example, in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, it's a babel fish
Yeah.
that goes into their ear.
So I would have,
So
yeah, I'd have fun with
maybe,
it. I think it can be a big part of the fun. Like the fish is a good example of how creative and cool it can be.
yeah, cool. So I'm gonna make a note of that. Make it something fun. Yeah, something that none of the kids dare to do except our kid, who's just different.
Okay, why is she different?
She's kind of the one that, so back here, she sort of um doesn't have the best home life. Is sort of fending for herself, hence the stealing food from the shop for to be able to eat. But the shopkeeper knows she does it and just kind of lets her because she knows she doesn't get enough food. That kind of like, because I sort of wanted a main character. I didn't want to spend too long on the grief of what they've lost. Like the other kids will go through that, but it's a kids show and it's meant to be about adventure, and yet I'm like killing off all of Earth. So our main character kind of has to, maybe in the very beginning, just sort of not acknowledge that they've lost their parents.
They're
And
happy
then
they
kind of
lost them. It sounds like, yeah, that's fine. So
yeah, like, and then it can hit them later on,
yeah, that's
Um
true. But I guess I was just assessing. So are you saying everybody else has happy home lives? Is that what you're setting up here?
um different home lives, but yeah, a lot of them could actually be really sad and mourning it like right at the beginning. And so she's like the odd one out there because
I
she
mean, in the
doesn't
opening
get
shots, like when you're cutting around the world, like is what you're setting up in this moment. There's a contrast between all these people who all have happy and fulfilled lives, and our main character who doesn't. Is that the point?
yeah, that is what I was trying to set up. So like they're sort of doing these fun things. you know, the fishing is probably there with his family.
Okay,
You
got it.
know,
I can see that was
maybe, you know,
in your head for this part. It just maybe isn't part is I know you mentioned it's early on in the document, so that isn't quite fully fleshed out here yet, but I get it now that you've explained it.
yeah, basically just kind of normal life of fun, like family, like the siblings doing homework, that kind of thing. And only one of them is going to be taken,
Okay, so
you know.
yeah, I get it. So it makes sense. So you are setting up, in fact, that she is different from them because they all like their lives.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. And then
good.
she's kind of this rough kind of 12-year-old that's like you know, the school uniform is too small for her or too big for her, but it's kind of like, you know, it's definitely secondhand. That's kind of the feeling I'm going for.
Mhm.
You know, she looks rough. So uh she so yeah, so I wanted to kind of the others not spend so much time on. She's the one we're spending time on, so we get to see her beforehand and then get to see what happens when you get taken up by the beam from her point of view. So the others are kind of like we're looking from an outside point of view, and then we go to her point of view where we see a bit more of her life. And then we follow her as she's taken, so then we know she's the main character. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Cool. And then they're in this place, and I was thinking that might be a nice time for us to meet what the alien caretakers look like, although I don't know what they are yet, which is why I've just kind of put this in. I'm not really sure about what I want them to be, some sort of AI, so maybe we don't see them yet. I don't know, but this is kind of like where they say, you know, you're being relocated to Alpha Prime, whatever, you know, for preservation. And then that's when we see the wall turn transparent and we see Earth. We see like what happens, the flashes of nukes. So it looks beautiful, and then there's flashes of nukes. Basically, Earth dies.
And how do the characters
And
react?
that's just
Oh, it's down here. What do the numbers
yeah,
represent? Are
yeah,
these
yeah.
kind of like these aren't separate scenes, are they? Or are they?
I was trying to go for beats, so I wanted to have ignore up to here, this all could go. This was so I was sort of trying to go with kind of like they're not scenes, they were more just kind of like moments for me. I
Okay.
wanted 10, but I ended up getting 11. Sort of doing a kind of like moments of change. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is this is this like the first few pages, or is this like the first few scenes in the script, or what does this comprise?
I imagine this being like the first, say, 5 minutes,
Okay.
kind of act one
That sounds about right.
of a half-hour script,
Okay.
rather
Or,
20-minute script.
oh, a 20-minute script.
I don't know. I don't know whether it be half hour or like 20, was it 22 minutes or something like that?
Okay. I would aim for 30 to 35 pages personally because
Okay, cool.
that's what most contests and fellowships ask for. That's like just such a standardized like pilot length. You can't go wrong.
Okay, cool. I mean, Bowen, this is the one that I want to send to that agent guy who's interested. Because I specifically said that, you know, he specifically asked if when I mentioned about screenwriting after Imogen introduced me, you know, he specifically asked John, he said, you know, is it children's fiction you're interested in? And I said children's and family. And that's when he said it's mostly kind of writing for existing TV shows or adaptations work. He'd love to see a script. So I just wanted to work on this one. I think that's sort of the best kind of show of what I I could do.
Yeah, it seems like
I don't know what the rest of the episode's going to be yet.
Okay, I think I would still suggest 30 pages would be a good benchmark to aim for. It's really easy,
Perfect.
3 acts of 10 pages each, just mathematically nice. In terms of
Cool.
this cold open, did you take us all the way through it, or was there one more beat after all that?
Basically the idea is we see the explosions of the Earth, and then you kind of get their reactions. I haven't really put in how she reacts because I'll sort of more focused on the others.
Okay.
I don't know how she reacts.
I
Like
think
other
the
than
important. That's like what we would end on.
Yeah.
It sounds like to me, like that's what would sort of set the course for your show. You might want to think about also like if you because I guess just based on what you said earlier that you've set up everybody else liked their life before, but if she was really unhappy, maybe this is sort of good for her. Maybe she kind of isn't so sad about this. Maybe she smiles and that takes us to the credits or something like that. Maybe that's a little too dark for you, but like something that just shows a very distinct difference in how she's processing and reacting to this as opposed to everybody else.
Yeah, because like that's the key thing. Her life is so bad that she's like, oh, this is a relief. You know?
Wow, yeah, it must be pretty
I
bad.
almost want her when she's escaping school and stealing to be like, when I was a kid and things got really rough, I used to pray to God that he would cause
There
the
you go.
rapture so that I
Yeah.
could just be free.
Yeah, like the Home Alone thing where Kevin's like, I wish my family would just disappear, and then guess what? They do, and he's like, I must have done that. Yeah, you can definitely play with that.
Yeah.
Every
So
day I
I
prayed
keep on
that
wondering that.
God would blow up the UK, and he finally did. Thanks, God.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a good, really good start. What we're looking for probably is that last moment. It's okay if you don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but I think that's going to set up. This show is about this person, and it's going to kind of tell us how she's different from everyone else. Like what her sort of. It's going to like I guess hint at what their dynamic is going to be to some extent. Show that she's like an outcast. She's like the character that the audience is kind of along for the ride with. Um, it I don't think it's too cliche. I think it'll really work once you find that last moment.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, and I think like the trajectory for her whole series. Obviously, I write the pilot, but they want like what I'd intend for the whole series would be her delayed grief, you know,
Okay.
because she's happy, but like I don't know, there's going to be people she does care about that she suddenly remembers.
Sure, I could see that coming up, and I would guess the show is also mostly about making or creating this new family for yourself because they have to, right?
Yeah, kind of found family, and it's that kind of think about the high school setting, except the characters are aliens, you know, that kind of like forming friendships, fighting enemies, fitting in, um
I mean,
all
they're
of
gonna
that
have to
kind
do
of
some sort of education, aren't they? I think you've created another boarding
yeah.
school situation. You gotta get. It always comes back to
Basically
boarding schools.
it's boarding school in space, yeah.
Can't get away from them. They're everywhere.
Yeah, but yeah,
It's a
that's
good
the
pitch.
idea. Is it's sort of I don't know whether you've seen or heard of Star Trek Academy, the new or Starfleet Academy, the new Star Trek show.
I haven't watched it. No, I'm
Um,
not much of a Trekkie. I've only seen like episodes here and
okay.
there of the various series.
Well, that one's sort of gone taking Star Trek into the whole sort of university life type avenue, you know.
Oh, like
Like
new
they've got a
adult
whole episode.
kind of thing.
Yeah, they've got like a whole episode where it's like the Starfleet Academy versus the War Academy. Yeah, exactly. Star Trek meets CW show. So
Mhm.
I'm sort of going along the lines of what tweens experience. You know, it's going to be the kind of friendships, betrayals, friendships reunited, enemies become friends, friends become enemies, all of those sort of tropes.
Yeah, the middle grade equivalent of the CW is Degrassi, isn't it? Isn't that the I never watched it growing up. Oh, yeah, I guess maybe you didn't have that in the UK, but we have that here.
No, but we've got like Grange Hill and things like that. So
Okay.
I watched.
We do get Degrassi in the UK.
Oh, you got that?
I never watched it.
I think it's Canadian actually, but it was popular in America. Go ahead.
I watched Galaxy High School when I was
Oh,
a
okay.
kid. That's more teen than tween for my liking, but that's kind of where I'm getting this concept from, where it's sort of this idea of humans in a alien kind of world.
Yeah, it's a great
And
premise.
I can just go wild. Yeah, I can go wild with the different classes,
Wait, look, this
with the
means
different types, the different species.
what was the show called again?
Hmm?
Galaxy High School.
Galaxy High School. Yeah.
Look, they're holding up a sign that says Class of 24. Maybe it took place in 2024.
I do wonder, actually. I think it was futuristic. It was done in the 90s.
Yeah, maybe 21, 24 or something like that. Anyway, let's wrap up with your project though. Did you have anything else you wanted to ask me or the room and get any more opinions on your intro?
I'm just interested in general, especially from people who watch those kind of like, the tween, like the Disney shows or things like that, kind of, yeah, whether they find it interesting, the character interesting. She's called Tasmin.
Okay, what do you guys think? Any reactions?
I must all hate it.
Maybe. We'll find out.
Just don't really watch this kind of show, so I can't really comment.
Fair enough.
I think the hardest part about this opening for me is that everybody, basically, the whole world dies, and I'm not really focusing on the grief. And that's going to be the hardest bit, which is why I picked this character.
Yeah, I mean, it's still pretty rough even watching a bunch of other kids watch every single person they know in the whole world being killed as their intro to a kids show. I mean, that even that is like,
Yeah,
it's a little rough. I mean, it could definitely work.
yeah,
I wonder what the audience would think. They'd probably, if I was a kid, I would be fine
yeah.
with it. I loved stuff like this. Hitchhiker's Guide has this happen in it. I wonder why that works. With Hitchhiker's Guide, I guess the main character, uh, he, I guess, gets swept along on the adventure a little too fast to be too sad. Is that how that goes? And I guess
I
maybe
think
he
so.
had,
Yeah, I mean,
maybe his only close relationships were with, is her name, Trillian?
oh yeah,
Well, we
and of
met her at a
course
party.
Ford.
Oh, he met her at, he
Yeah,
wasn't even
Ford.
close with her, but he had like had a, it was like, she was like the girl he had a crush on or something, if I remember correctly.
His closest friend was Ford Prefect, who is a
Yeah,
weirdo who named himself after a car because he thought cars were the dominant life form.
You know what?
Uh,
yeah,
Actually, maybe that actually helps make it not be so sad too. Your girl and your best friend are with you, or not your girl, but like you know what I mean.
your
Like the
your
eventually
best
they get
friend's with
together.
you, and your life on Earth was kind of crap, and you're
Yeah,
about to lose your house anyway. So
yeah.
like,
Maybe that's what you're
yeah,
thinking about too, Becky. Like, does she have a relationship with anyone else at all in the crew? I wonder.
yeah. So maybe the species sort of does understand the idea of relationships and takes the kids in pairs.
That could work.
Then I
Yeah,
can see they're having twins.
sure. It could, or it could be just somebody you were right next to. Like maybe you were just, holding hands with someone or something like that. Like I wonder a reason you could get someone.
Oh no,
Go ahead.
that would be funny if she's taken up with like her mortal enemy. They get into a
Sure.
fight and they get taken up together.
Maybe, yeah, that could work. Yeah, it depends how you. I mean, obviously, that would just add more. That would be even worse, an even worse situation for the
Yeah, it
character.
would
But it
be.
could be
No, I do like the
entertaining.
idea of friends. So she's persuaded, maybe her best friend is someone who didn't want to skip class and she's sort of making her or something.
Yeah, I wonder if there's something there. I think that just really helps with the fun of it is like having somebody familiar with that we're familiar with, somebody that we can rely on. Like a kid just totally out, like even an adult, even thinking of Arthur, if he was out there totally alone, he'd be a little more scared, I feel.
Yeah.
All
I
right,
mean, I've kind
thank
of
you for the
got
thoughts. Go ahead.
5 here then, because I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it'd be 7, 8. I just got to get rid of one of these places, get rid of the kid playing football in Manchester. Yeah, and then it would work.
Okay, great. Give that a try. Thank you for the
Cool.
thoughts, everybody who weighed in.
Thank you, everyone.
Let's reopen to any more screenwriting questions, loglines, outlines. Oops, my screen is way too big. Last call. We have a novel class later today at 3. And tomorrow, in person, I am teaching at the Boyle Heights Arts Conservatory in Los Angeles, a whole class on writing short films from 1 to 5 p.m. If you come with your an idea or an outline for a short film, maybe you'll leave with the first draft. If you come with just the idea and without an outline, then maybe you'll leave with an outline. So I hope to at least take you in those 4 or 5 hours to that next stage of, from wherever you are to the next step of making your short happen. Or maybe if you come in with a more solid draft, you could rewrite it if you wanted to. I mean, we'll be focusing on writing news stories, but entirely up to you. We hope to see you guys there. That is free and public and open to everybody. There's details on our meetup page for the event. And we also have new links, thank you, Nacho, for the upcoming bootcamp sessions. Bootcamps will take you all the way from idea to finished draft of a new script, either pilot or TV, pilot or feature in 8 weeks, or our novel bootcamp, which takes you from idea to finished draft of a new novel in 12 weeks. Those links in the chat, it's scriptca.mp/bootcamp or wordca.mp/bootcamp. Those will take you right to the sign-up sheet where you can sign up and get instant access to our member exclusive chat channels. We hope to see you guys in our upcoming sessions, which will be in this time slot. This is where features will be for the next 8 weeks. So we're starting that really soon. And then, books will be at 3 o'clock on the same day. Becky, do you have a question? Go ahead.
2 things. So first of all, the Year of Sword posted something. They posted it just after Luke said about Star Trek Meet CW show. But also, I wondered if I could quickly plug. So tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. UK time, which I forget, it's like 5 in the morning for Eastern, I think. I'm doing my I've forgotten the word. Where I have people.
Lab. Yeah.
For UK people, feel free to come. Sorry, I'm very tired.
All good.
And again for UK people, because your novel boot camp's a bit late for us. Connor,
You don't have to be from the UK though. Everyone's welcome.
Well, you don't have
but,
to be from New Zealand, you know.
But many other people will be asleep though.
Yeah. Although, do you know what? A lot of Americans come along. It's like 5 in the morning on the East Coast, and they still come.
I'll never get it. I'm not available until I'm not a morning person. I'm like before 11, I am not good.
Same. But and then on the 15th of February for UK people, and again anyone can come, but it's because sorry, your one's a bit late for us. I'm doing the equivalent novel boot camp at 4 p.m. British time on Sundays. Again, I think that's like 8 in the morning or something. I don't know. I can't remember.
Yeah, 8 a.m. Pacific time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
8 hours behind you.
I expect you to be there, Connor.
No,
I'm joking.
Absolutely not. But I wish you the best. Yeah, all you early risers. Thank you for that. I'll look at this logline that Kason shared, and then we'll wrap up after that. All right. So logline is Aaron's wife dies, so he sets up to bring her back alive as he ends up breaking the causal dynamic triangulations of the universe. Wow. Okay. So I think that you're saying a guy is going to sort of use time travel or dimension travel to bring his dead wife back to life. Is that right? You have posted a little bit more of the synopsis. She dies in a war involving a bomb that removes people from the timeline. He then creates time travel. Okay. So we need to sneak into a lab to get the technology to fix time and bring the wife back to life. Okay. I think in the synopsis that you posted, you have kind of gotten a little bit more to the point there, although in too many words. I think I would start with the problem. So always the first clause should be the issue that we need to resolve. So it's not just that she's died, it's that it sounds like she's been removed from the time stream. Unless you're saying that's just a way of saying that she has died. I'm not exactly sure what that means. So you might in your case want to say something like, start with when his wife is erased from the timeline an inventor, like who is your main character? Maybe start with a sense of adjective, then a noun for your protagonist. We don't really know who Aaron is. So if you tell us something like he's a scatterbrained inventor or whatever it is, right? Then we'll have a sense of the archetype of the kind of person that he is. So maybe start with that and then tell us he must do what? He must invent a time machine, or he must, if it's mostly about him trying to make the machine. Or I guess if you're sort of saying it's mostly about him traveling through dimensions or time to save her, then that'll be like the second clause of your logline. So a heartbroken inventor must travel to blank and blank time and place in order to bring her back. Try not to go too complicated on the causal triangulations of the universe. I'm not quite sure what that means. I think the basics are guy's wife is removed from time. He has to make a time machine and travel through the dimensions to save her. So I would try to keep it focused around that. Don't explain too much of the science around what's going on. For a logline, we just need to know the basics. Hope that helps with that. Thank you for sharing that. I'll be glad to look at a revised version later if you bring it back. Time is made of triangles. Okay, I'm not sure what that means. That seems a little too complex for the logline. Maybe that could come out in the story, all the triangle stuff, but for the purpose of the logline, just focus on the characters, the motivation, and who has to do what. Make sense? All right, thanks for sharing. We will wrap up here, and we'll see you guys soon for your next class or event. Have a good rest of your weekend.
Thanks.